Welcome to Principles of Ecology. Today, we are going to explore a fascinating topic: how energy travels through the natural world. We will look at the pathways that sustain life, comparing simple linear food chains with the more complex, resilient Y-shaped chains that actually keep our ecosystems thriving. By the end of this lesson, you will understand the hidden architecture of nature's energy flow. To start, imagine you are tracking the delivery of goods from a massive factory. In a very simple, idealized world, these goods travel in a single straight line, directly from the factory to a retail store, and finally to a customer. This straight-line journey is exactly how we first learn about energy moving through nature. However, the real world is much more resourceful. While fresh goods go to the store, damaged materials are sent to a recycling plant, creating a parallel pathway. Eventually, both might reach the same customer. This branching is the secret to how ecosystems survive. Now that we have our factory analogy, let us formally define these pathways, starting with the linear food chain. A linear food chain is a simplified, straight-line sequence where energy and nutrients pass as one organism eats another. It typically isolates just one pathway. For instance, you might have a grazing chain that starts strictly with green plants, or a completely separate detritus chain that starts with dead organic matter. While this model is very easy to understand and serves as a great teaching tool, it is an oversimplification. It assumes these pathways never interact, which rarely happens in reality. Because the linear model is too simple, ecologists use a more realistic model. This brings us to the Y-shaped food chain. A Y-shaped chain explicitly connects the grazing food chain and the detritus food chain. It recognizes that energy from primary producers splits into two distinct routes, one consumed by herbivores while the plant is alive, and one consumed by decomposers after the plant dies. Crucially, these two separate arms of the Y do not remain isolated forever. They frequently merge at higher trophic levels. A top predator might eat prey from both the grazing arm and the detritus arm, uniting the flows. You might wonder why we need to complicate things with this Y-shaped model instead of just sticking to simple linear chains. The answer lies in the incredible stability and resilience that this branching structure provides to real-world ecosystems. If an ecosystem relied entirely on a single linear grazing chain, a sudden drought that kills off fresh leaves would cause the entire food chain to collapse and starve. However, because nature operates on a Y-shaped model, the dead leaves simply shift the energy flow into the detritus arm. Top predators can survive by feeding on detritivores, ensuring no energy is wasted. To truly understand how energy moves through these chains, we need to look at the mathematics of ecological efficiency. As energy travels from one organism to the next, a massive amount is lost as heat due to respiration. This formula, En equals En minus 1 times epsilon, calculates the exact amount of energy available at any given step. En represents the total energy available at the current trophic level. En minus 1 represents the energy present at the immediately preceding level, which acts as the food source. The symbol epsilon represents the ecological efficiency, which is the fraction of energy successfully transferred. Typically, epsilon is roughly 0.10, famously known as Lindemann's 10% rule. If efficiency increases, more energy reaches top predators. Before we move on to complex networks, let us see this formula in action with a concrete example of a linear grazing chain. Imagine a simple chain consisting of grass, a grasshopper,
and a frog. Suppose the grass, our primary producer at level 1, captures an initial energy of 10,000 joules from the sun. We want to find out how much energy reaches the grasshopper at level 2. We apply our formula, multiplying the initial 10,000 joules by the standard efficiency of 0.10. The result is that the grasshopper receives only 1,000 joules of usable energy. The other 9,000 joules were lost to the environment as heat.
Now that we have calculated the energy for the grasshopper, let us perform the calculation one more time to find the energy for the frog at level 3. We take the 1,000 joules available from the grasshopper and multiply it by the 0.10 efficiency again. The final answer is that the frog receives only 100 joules of energy from the original 10,000 joules captured by the grass. This massive drop in energy perfectly illustrates why linear food chains rarely have more than 4 or 5 levels. There simply is not enough energy left to support higher predators if they rely on a single straight pathway. This limitation of linear chains leads us to an important question. How do top predators actually survive? The answer lies in energy convergence within a Y-shaped chain. Because many predators are generalists, they do not rely on just one food source. This formula, EB equals EG plus ED, represents the merging point of the Y-shaped chain. To find the total energy available to a predator, like a bird, we simply add the energy it extracts from the living plant pathway, the grazing arm, and the dead plant pathway, the detritus arm, together. By pooling these resources, the predator gathers enough energy to thrive. If one pathway decreases, the other can compensate, which is what makes Y-shaped chains so incredibly stable. Let us apply this convergence formula to a realistic Y-shaped food chain in a forest ecosystem. Imagine a bird acting as a secondary consumer, feeding from 2 different pathways simultaneously. From the grazing arm, it eats caterpillars that contain 400 joules of available energy. From the detritus arm, it eats earthworms that contain 600 joules of available energy. We need to calculate the total energy the bird receives. By simply adding the 400 joules and the 600 joules together, we find that the bird has a total of 1,000 Gs of energy available to it. Even if a disease wiped out all the caterpillars, the bird would still have 600 joules from the earthworms to survive. Now that we know the bird has accumulated 1,000 joules of energy, let us determine how much energy it will pass on to a hawk that eats it. We return to our standard ecological efficiency multiplier. We take the bird's total accumulated energy of 1,000 joules and multiply it by the 0.10 efficiency. The final answer is that the hawk receives 100 joules of energy. This example beautifully demonstrates how a Y-shaped chain pools energy from different sources. By combining the grazing and detritus pathways, higher-level predators like the hawk are allowed to thrive, even when individual linear pathways might be too weak to support them alone. Having calculated the energy flow, let us look at a visual representation of this entire process. Here, you see a schematic diagram of a Y-shaped food chain. At the very bottom, we have our primary producers, the plants. Notice how the energy flow branches outwards into 2 distinct paths, forming the base of the Y. The left path represents the grazing food chain, supporting herbivores like caterpillars. The right path represents the detritus food chain, supporting decomposers like earthworms. Finally, follow the arrows upwards to see both pathways converging at the top. They merge at the secondary consumers, like our bird. This diagram perfectly captures how ecosystems split and recombine energy to maximize survival. To wrap up our lesson, let us review the most important ideas we have covered today. First, remember that while linear food chains are excellent teaching tools, they are oversimplified versions of reality. Nature actually relies on the Y-shaped food chain to maximize efficiency and ensure survival. By splitting energy into grazing and detritus pathways and merging them at higher levels, ecosystems create a robust, fail-safe network. This branching structure guarantees that whether a plant is eaten alive or decomposes after death, its energy continues to fuel the magnificent web of life. You now have a solid understanding of how energy truly flows through our natural world.